What if I told you that right now, someone in this room with you is lying about who they really are? Not a small lie, their entire existence is fabricated. Their name, their job, their family, even the way they laugh. Everything calibrated, everything controlled, and you'd never know. This is the spy mindset, and by the end of this, you'll start to see the world the way they do. The human brain processes approximately 11 million pieces of information every second, but we're consciously aware of only about 40. A spy trains themselves to flip that ratio. While you're noticing the person talking to you, they're cataloging everyone else in the peripheral. While you're thinking about what to say next, they're analyzing micro-expressions, vocal stress patterns, and whether the man by the window has checked his phone too many times. To be genuinely waiting for someone. This isn't paranoia, it's professional survival. The spy mindset begins with a fundamental rewiring of perception. Where you see a coffee shop, they see a grid of vulnerabilities and opportunities. Let me take you inside their head. A trained intelligence operative walks into that same cafe you visit every morning, but they experience it completely differently. Before the door fully closes behind them, they've identified 3 exits, including the kitchen service entrance. They've noted the couple in the corner booth who stopped talking when they entered. They've registered the security camera blind spot near the restrooms. They've selected the seat that places their back to a wall with sight lines to both entrances. And all of this happens in less than 4 seconds, while their face display is nothing but casual normalcy. This is the foundational principle of the spy mindset. Total situational awareness masked by absolute ordinariness. But awareness alone isn't enough. The spy mindset operates on a principle intelligence agencies call tactical dissociation. Imagine splitting your consciousness into 2 separate streams. One stream is your cover identity, the persona you're projecting to the world. This version of you has opinions about the weather, preferences for coffee, a backstory that rolls off the tongue naturally because you've lived it in your mind 1,000 times. This identity has emotions, hesitations, quirks that make it believable. The other stream is your operational consciousness, cold, calculating, mission-focused. This is the part that remembers you right here to brush past a target and plant a tracking device, or to casually photograph documents left on a table, or to assess whether the asset you're meeting shows signs of being doubled. Most people can't maintain this split for 5 minutes without one side bleeding into the other. Spies do it for years. The psychological architecture required for this is fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. Intelligence psychologists have found that the most successful field operatives share certain cognitive traits. They have extraordinary working memory, the ability to hold multiple complex narratives in mind simultaneously without confusing them. They demonstrate what's called effective compartmentalization, which is a clinical way of saying they can genuinely feel emotions in the moment, while keeping those emotions from influencing their decisions. When a spy's cover story involves having a dead sister, they can tear up convincingly while discussing it, yet feel nothing once the interaction ends. The emotion was real in that moment, but it was also controlled, deployed, switched on and off like a utility. This controlled emotional state extends to how spies process danger. Your brain's threat response, the famous fight, flight, or freeze reaction, is governed by the amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons that screams at you when something's wrong. For most people, this system is binary, safe or threatened. For a trained operative, threat exists on a spectrum, and their response is measured along that spectrum. They feel the adrenaline spike when they notice surveillance, but instead of running or confronting, they channel the chemical surge into heightened cognitive function. Their heart rate might climb, but their hands remain steady. Their mind might be calculating 7 different escape scenarios, but their face shows mild boredom. This isn't suppression, it's redirection. The fear becomes fuel for sharper awareness rather than a trigger for panic. Now consider how this mindset approaches trust, because this is where the spy's internal world becomes truly alien to normal human psychology. You probably have somewhere between 5 and 15 people you genuinely trust, people you decall in a crisis, people you share real thoughts with. A field operative might spend a decade without experiencing genuine trust. Everyone is a potential source or a potential threat, often simultaneously. That friendly embassy official, who's been helpful, could be a rival service trying to feed you disinformation. That asset who's provided solid intelligence for 2 years might be establishing credibility before delivering a career-ending fabrication. Even handlers back at headquarters could be compromised, incompetent, or pursuing agendas that conflict with the operative's survival. The spy mindset exists in a state of permanent tactical loneliness. Relationships become tools. Affection becomes leverage. And the vulnerability required for genuine human connection becomes an operational liability. Yet, paradoxically, spies must be exceptional at creating the illusion of connection. The best intelligence operatives are often charming, personable, the kind of people you'd want to grab drinks with. This isn't accidental, it's cultivated. They study the psychology of rapport building the way a surgeon studies anatomy. They learn to mirror body language so subtly you never notice. They master the art of the non-threatening question that extracts information while feeling like casual conversation. They understand that people reveal more when they feel understood. So they become exceptional listeners not because they care, but because listening is collection. Every smile, every shared laugh, every moment of apparent vulnerability is calculated to build a bridge into your confidence. And here's the disturbing part. They can do this while genuinely liking you. The affection is real. The friendship feels authentic, but it's also always operational. The spy mindset doesn't require them to fake emotions, it requires them to use real emotions. For professional purposes, this instrumentalization of human connection creates a peculiar form of psychological damage. Intelligence agencies recognize this, which is why even Cold War veterans, decades after retirement, struggle with intimate relationships. When you've spent years treating emotional bonds as manipulatable assets, turning that off isn't simple. The mindset persists. The damage runs deeper than failed relationships. It infiltrates memory itself. A spy-ass relationship, a truth becomes fundamentally corrupted because they spend so much time living inside constructed realities. Intelligent psychologists call this narrative contamination when your cover stories become so detailed and so frequently rehearsed that they start to feel like actual memories. A veteran operative once described it as having multiple childhood homes in their head, only one of which was real, but all of which triggered genuine nostalgic feelings. The brain doesn't naturally distinguish between lived experience and vividly imagined scenarios that have been mentally rehearsed thousands of times. Neural pathways form either way, so a spy might genuinely struggle to remember whether they actually grew up in Munich or whether that was just the legend they maintained for 3 years. The spy mindset doesn't just split consciousness, it fragments autobiographical memory into competing versions of a life, each one feeling equally authentic. This fragmentation serves a purpose beyond just maintaining cover. It's a defensive mechanism against interrogation, both external and internal. If you're captured and tortured, having genuinely confused memories about your own past provides layers of misdirection. You're not lying when you can't remember clearly. The confusion is real. But more insidiously, this fragmented sense of self protects against the psychological warfare that comes from within. Intelligence agencies themselves, when your own organization might be testing your loyalty, running false flag operations to see if you're doubled, or feeding you information to trace leaks. Having an unclear sense of your own narrative makes you harder to manipulate. The spy mindset embraces a fluid identity not just for external deception, but for internal protection. Now let's talk about how spies plan, because this reveals the mindset's most distinctive feature. Inverted thinking. Normal people plan for success and hope to avoid failure. Spies plan for catastrophic failure and treat success as a pleasant surprise. This isn't pessimism, it's a mathematical approach to risk. Every operation begins with the question, what's the worst thing that could happen? And how do I survive it? Your cover gets blown. Do you have a secondary legend that explains why you lie about the first identity? Your contact gets arrested. Have you structured communications so there's no evidence trail leading back? Your extraction point is compromised. Do you have 3 other ways out of the country? Intelligence agencies call this backwards planning or red teaming yourself. And it produces a mindset that sees disaster around every corner, not because of anxiety, but because of methodology. This creates a peculiar relationship with time. Spies exist simultaneously in multiple temporal frames. There's the immediate present, the conversation happening right now, the drink in your hand, the smile you're maintaining. There's the near future, the next 3 moves, the meeting in 40 minutes, the dead drop you need to check before dawn. There's the medium-term operational timeline, the asset you're developing, who won't be useful for 6 months, the cover identity you're establishing for a mission that doesn't exist yet. And there's the long-term strategic horizon, geopolitical shifts that might make your current work irrelevant or critical, career trajectories within your agency, the eventual exit from field work. Most people struggle to hold 2 of these timeframes in mind simultaneously. The spy mindset operates across all of them continuously, making decisions in the present that serve purposes years down the chain. This temporal complexity extends to their planning methodology. Intelligence operations are built on contingency trees, if-then structures that branch endlessly. If the target goes to the restaurant, approach at the bar. If they don't, use the secondary contact point at the museum. If that's compromised, abort and use the emergency signal. But each of those branches has sub-branches, and those have sub-branches, creating decision matrices so complex that they'd overwhelm normal cognition. Spies develop mental frameworks that compress these trees into retrievable patterns. They don't memorize every possibility, they internalize the logic structures so they can generate appropriate responses in real time. It's less like following a script and more like learning a language. You don't memorize every possible sentence. You internalize grammar and vocabulary so you can construct what you need when you need it. The planning mindset also embraces something intelligence officers call operational patience, which is distinct from ordinary patience. You might wait patiently for a promotion or a relationship to develop, but you're emotionally invested in the outcome. Operational patience is waiting without attachment, holding readiness without urgency. A spy might spend 8 months befriending a secretary to get access to an office they need to be in for 15 minutes. Those 8 months are frustrating because the operative isn't emotionally connected to the timeline. They're simply executing a phase. This detachment from outcome while maintaining perfect execution is mentally exhausting for normal psychology. We want to feel like our efforts are progressing. The spy mindset accepts that most operational time is dead time, preparation time, positioning time. The actual intelligence collection might be 3% of the total effort, but that 3% only succeeds because of the 97% of invisible groundwork. But here's where the mindset becomes genuinely alien to civilian thinking. Spies plan with the assumption that their plans will fail, not might fail, will fail. No operation survives contact. With reality intact, variables multiply, people behave unpredictably, technology malfunctions, weather changes, rival services interfere. So the planning process isn't about creating the perfect operation. It's about building a structure flexible enough to absorb failures without collapsing. Intelligence veterans describe this as planning for chaos. You create multiple paths to the objective, redundant systems for every critical function, and decision points where you can radically alter approach based on emerging information. The mindset treats the original plan as a starting hypothesis rather than a blueprint. This is why spies often seem eerily calm when things go wrong. They expected things to go wrong. The surprise would be if everything went according to plan. This acceptance of inevitable failure creates a peculiar form of operational humility. Spies can't afford the arrogance of believing they've thought of everything, because the moment you believe that, you stop adapting. The spy mindset maintains what psychologists call confident uncertainty. High confidence in your ability to respond to circumstances. Low confidence in your ability to predict them. You trust your skills while doubting your forecasts. This confident uncertainty becomes most visible in how spies react under pressure. And this is where the mindset reveals its most carefully constructed elements. When you're confronted with a threat, whether it's realizing you're being followed, noticing your asset is behaving strangely, or having someone question your cover story, your body floods with stress hormones. Your pupils dilate, your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat. These are involuntary physiological responses that most people can't control. But what you can control is what happens next. Untrained people either lock up or act rashly. The spy mindset has a third option: controlled improvisation. The moment of recognition, that instant where you realize something is very wrong, triggers not panic, but a mental protocol. Time seems to slow down not because it actually does, but because your brain shifts into a different processing mode, one that's been trained through thousands of hours of scenario work. Here's what's happening in those critical seconds. First, there's immediate threat assessment. Is this surveillance, confrontation, or coincidence? The spy rapidly cycles through evidence, assigning probability weights. Second, there's identity maintenance. Whatever your internal alarm bells are screaming, your external presentation must remain consistent with your cover. If you're supposed to be a carefree tourist, sudden wariness would be an obvious tell. Third, there's tactical repositioning. How do you maneuver yourself into a better position? More exits, more witnesses, more ambiguity while appearing to move naturally. All of this happens simultaneously. A parallel processing of threat and response that most humans simply aren't wired for. But spies aren't born with this capability. They build it through relentless training that rewires their stress response patterns. The key to this reaction framework is that spies don't try to eliminate their fear, they redirect it. That surge of adrenaline becomes enhanced focus. That spike in heart rate becomes available energy. The tremor in your hands becomes stillness through conscious muscle control. Intelligence agencies teach operatives to recognize their own fear responses as data rather than directives. Your body is telling you there's danger, which is useful information, but it's not telling you what to do about it. That decision comes from the trained, operational part of your consciousness. This is why veteran spies often describe feeling intense fear during operations, but never feeling controlled by it. The emotion exists in one compartment while decision-making happens in another. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of the spyish reactive mindset is the principle of misdirection over confrontation. When a normal person is accused of something, their instinct is to deny it. When a spy is accused, their instinct is to provide an alternative explanation that's equally plausible and verifiable. Let's say someone questions why you're photographing a particular building. The amateur liar says, "I wasn't photographing it," which invites them to check your phone and prove you wrong. The spy says, "Oh, the architecture is fascinating. I'm actually an amateur photographer. Been documenting Art Deco buildings across the city. Want to see my collection?" Now you've confirmed the accusation while reframing its meaning. You weren't denying reality. You were providing context that transforms suspicious behavior into innocent eccentricity. This requires tremendous cognitive flexibility, the ability to take an accusation, accept its factual basis, but completely alter its interpretation. This misdirection mindset extends to how spies handle being followed. The untrained response is either to run or to confront the follower. Both confirm that you know you're being surveilled, which tells the opposition they need to be more careful, and potentially that you have something worth hiding. The trained response is theatrical. Misdirection: you lead your follower on a journey that creates ambiguity about whether you know they're there. You stop to window shop. You double back as if you forgot something. You take an inefficient route that could be explained by unfamiliarity with the area. You're making their job harder while maintaining plausible deniability about your awareness. And if you need to actually lose them, you do it in a moment, where it could be attributed to coincidence: boarding a train just as doors close, entering a building with multiple exits during lunch rush, joining a crowd during a public event. The escape must look accidental, not intentional. The reactive mindset also embraces continuous recalibration. Every interaction, every observation, every piece of new information triggers an immediate mental update of the operational landscape. Spy doesn't just react to obvious threats. They react to subtle shifts in context. Your contact uses a word they've never used before. Is it a stress signal, a warning code, or nothing? The hotel clerk looks at you a second too long. Has your cover been compromised? Are they just attracted to you? Or are you becoming paranoid? Someone who was sitting near you at lunch reappears. At your dinner location, sophisticated surveillance, pure coincidence. Or are you in a tourist area where overlap is normal? The spy mindset is constantly running these calculations, updating threat assessments, adjusting behavior in micro increments. This isn't exhausting hypervigilance. It's become background processing, as automatic as breathing. Yet here's the final paradox of the spy mindset. Despite all this control, all this calculation, all this careful construction of identity and response, spies must also cultivate the ability to appear spontaneous. Because nothing looks more suspicious than someone who never makes mistakes, never acts on impulse, never reveals genuine emotion. The most effective operatives learn to strategically lower their guard, to display carefully selected vulnerabilities, to make minor errors that humanize them. They might genuinely laugh at a joke, might share a real childhood memory alongside the fabricated ones, might show authentic irritation at a delayed flight. These moments of genuine humanity aren't breaks in cover, they're part of the cover. The spy mindset understands that perfect control is itself a tell, so they build an imperfection, creating a realistic texture of human inconsistency that makes the larger deception invisible. This is the spy mindset in its totality. Perpetual awareness masked as casual presence. Fragmented identity maintained with absolute consistency. Meticulous planning for inevitable chaos. And fear transformed into fuel. It has a way of experiencing reality that most humans touch only in nightmares where nothing is quite what it seems, including yourself. And once you've trained your mind to operate this way, you can never fully turn it off. The world never looks normal again.